You have reached the deepest depths of the internet. If it is greatness you seek, you've come to the wrong show. If it's about not wasting time, don't worry, you're never going to get your time back. If it's knowledge you seek, just be aware, any knowledge gained here is going to be minuscule. So now it's time for Accost with Tony Gerdeman on the Ozone Radio Network.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Accost. I am Tony Gerdeman. Thank you for joining us here, as always, with Tom Orr and our producer, Shannon Sommers. Shannon, how's it going?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on again.
You're welcome. It's not something that's easy to do, but you know, we're nothing if not charitable. Tom, how's it going?
It's great. Just glad Shannon's back.
We shouldn't start the show off with lies.
Welcome to college football's most sarcastic podcast.
But yeah, thanks everybody for joining us. Last week was the Joe Burrow show after he announced his transfer to LSU, Cincinnati, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, North
UNC.
Carolina. Shannon, I'm just going to name a bunch of schools, and then once he finally decides it, just cut that one in there, okay?
Okay.
I'm going to start with the A's. Abilene.
As reported first on Accost, Joe Burrow will be transferring to school name here.
So today, we didn't talk as much about Dwayne Haskins last week as we wanted to, because then that would have been a 4-hour show probably, and you only want a 3-hour show. So today we will spend some time talking about Dwayne Haskins, what the transfer means for him, what it means for his role in the Ohio State offense, what that offense is going to look like, who it's going to help, and you know, all of that stuff, all of the stuff that we didn't really get to talk about last week, but have probably talked about in other shows. But so when we talk about what this means for the Ohio State offense, for me, Tom, the one thing that I'm looking forward to finding out, hopefully finding out definitively, is whether or not last year, whether it was JT Barrett or it was the receivers holding the passing game back. And I say holding the passing game back, knowing that it was one of the best passing offenses in Ohio State history. But for some reason that wasn't good enough. And I think it always goes back to it needs to be better against the best defenses. And that's where JT Barrett has struggled in the passing game. That's where, frankly, Urban Meyer's teams have struggled in the passing game, was, you know, against the best defenses. So I think Haskins gives them the potential to handle those kind of defenses. But are these the receivers that get it done? And are these the receivers that make it possible? And so, Tom, I'll just toss it to you. Do you think it's the receivers? Do you think it was JT Barrett? And do you think, whether, even if you don't know who it was last year, if you don't have an opinion on it, we find out this season who was, quote unquote, at fault?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I don't think the receivers are the position group that benefits the most from JT Barrett being replaced with Dwayne Haskins, but I think the receiver group is the position that we're going to find out the most about this year. Because you're right, there's last year can now be sort of treated as a control group where, yes, they will throw for this many yards in this type of offense with this quarterback. Okay, now we're going to have all the receivers stay the same, and we're just going to change the quarterback. And, you know, it's the same offensive coaches. They may be calling a slightly different offense, but it's the same offensive coaches. It's the same wide receivers. So you're doing something kind of a scientific experiment here to determine, you know, which variable was at fault last year. Fault in kind of air quotes. I think you're going to see a marked improvement in the downfield passing. Passes on, with balls traveling in the air more than 20 or 30 yards. I think you're going to see a marked improvement in those. Ohio State, you touched on it. Ohio State had a very effective pass offense last year and a very statistically impressive offense, but it has been pretty consistently with JT Barrett as quarterback. They pile up insane stats against crappy opponents where they can just sort of out personnel the opponent. Against the Rutgerses and the Illinois and the whatever fill in the blank crappy non-conference team. The personnel is so much better that the wide receivers are just faster than the defensive backs on the other team, and so you hit Paris Campbell on a little 10-yard crossing route, and then he just goes 70 yards, and you have some real shiny, beautiful stats. And that's not when you face better competition. That wasn't the case. They looked. They kind of put it in neutral in the second half against USC, but the offense did not look good against USC. The offense did not look good for long stretches against Michigan last year. They didn't look great for the first half against Penn State. The fourth quarter, they kind of kicked it into gear and had one of the best quarters in Ohio State history. But for a big chunk of that game, they didn't look great. They didn't look great against Oklahoma. And that's, this is all the best teams that they played, they kind of struggled against, excluding Michigan State, which was an almost Iowa-like outlier in terms of, so far, so inexplicable relative to all the other results in the season that you almost have to throw it out. In the same way that Iowa, the defense against Iowa was just like, I don't understand any of this. None of this makes sense. So I think we're going to learn a lot more. I think you're going to see increased production from the wide receivers this year. But, there were plenty of deep balls last year that, during the heyday of the bench JT Barrett cacophony on Twitter, I tweeted a picture, benching JT Barrett is going to fix everything. And it was a picture of multiple Ohio State receivers with balls, open downfield with balls just going right between their hands. Guys, this was not a 100% JT Barrett issue last year, not completing on deep passes. But I think some of the issue lay with Barrett, and I think you're going to see an improved downfield passing game this year.
Now, are you saying throw out Michigan State because you picked the Spartans that week? Is that the real reason you want to throw that game out?
That was not the two greatest weeks of prognostication on my part, as we've talked about on a few different occasions on this podcast. I would love to say 55 points to Iowa and then beating Michigan State by 6 touchdowns. Who could have seen that coming? Which, Lord knows I didn't see that coming, so I guess no one could have seen that coming, right?
Honestly, though, who could have seen that coming? Sure, I picked Iowa by 4 touchdowns. They did a little bit better than that. And sure, I picked Ohio State by 35, and they did a little bit better than that, so you're right. Who could have seen that coming? But that was a long time ago. No need to look up to see if I'm actually telling the truth. The thing with the receivers, is it the receivers or was it JT Barrett? I think I don't know that it has to be one or the other. I think it can be both. And you were talking a little bit about that where it wasn't just on JT, because I still have concerns about Terry McLaurin being a consistent deep threat. I think we all have concerns about Paris Campbell being a consistent receiving threat anywhere. I'm still in the boat that the more he touches it, the better the Ohio State offense is. And the more he touches it, the more explosive, the more capable of winning a national title Ohio State is. But Shannon, if you had to put money on it, are you betting on last year being JT's fault or the receiver's fault?
Even if you're betting or not betting, the fact remains that they both share responsibility. I mean, sure, there were times where JT was missing plays as far as the throws, but how many times, though, do we know that maybe he pulled the ball back and ran it because somebody wasn't getting separation, or like Tom was talking about, to drop balls and stuff like that? I mean, I got to go with the wide receivers because the quarterback who has all these Big Ten records, I mean, he has to be he has to be the I can't even think of the words here. I'm just dumbfounded.
Well,
he has to be innocent in this. He has to be innocent in this.
He's got to be what?
He has to be innocent in this. So I'm just going to blame the wide receivers.
One of the things I think the JT Barrett, his first week or so in the mini camp, the Saints mini camp, I saw a report where he wasn't maybe trusting his arm, and they just wanted him to let it go. And that's one of the things that Dwayne Haskins does. He trusts his arm. And there are times in the last 4 years where JT, you could tell, didn't trust something. Was it his arm? Was it the receivers? And I also think there are times where the coaches didn't trust him, and now you tell them that, and they'll want to fight you. But you can see their levels of trust in the play calling. And there are certainly times where it should have been a pass on third and whatever, and it wasn't. And that speaks to the lack of trust or the lack of conviction that he can get that pass made or can pick up that first down where it is. So the thing with Haskins is the same thing that JT told us about him last year. He tries to fit it into windows like Cardale. Sometimes that's dangerous, and JT Barrett sees it as dangerous. And Dwayne Haskins is going to throw more interceptions than JT because he has more confidence in his arm to make the throws. He's going to try to put them in tighter windows. He's going to take more chances. That opens up the offense, and there's some give and take with that. But I think with everything that Ohio State has, you can afford that because of the defense, because of the running game, because if he throws 4 more interceptions than Barrett did last year, but 500, 600 more yards in the passing game, and the everything is more wide open, you'll take that every single day. And then with that offense being wide open, I'm still convinced that Ohio State has 2 1,000-yard rushers this year because of the move to a less running quarterback offense. I believe that is the actual term. Bill Walsh coined it. The less quarterback running offense. You can look that up. That's on the internet as well. That's the real name of it. But with more carries to go around, we've said on many shows, if you wanted to make Mike Weber or J.K. Dobbins smile, Tom, you would just ask them about an offense where the quarterback doesn't run the ball, and their smiles would light up the whack.
Right. I believe Bill Walsh actually called that the Great Lakes Coast offense. That was the technical term for it. But
I like that.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's. I mean, I kind of hinted at this earlier, where I think the wide receivers are the position we're going to find out the most about this year. I think the running backs is the position that we're going to find that is going to benefit the most this year from having it be Haskins and not Barrett. Because you're right. I mean, there are a ton more carries to go around. I mean, Barrett was a 12 to 18 and sometimes 20 carry a game guy last year. Dwayne Haskins is going to be, maybe 5-ish, maybe less than that, and some for Tate Martell too. But there's at least going to be 10, maybe more carries out there, more per game for the running backs. I don't know that I agree that both guys will get to 1,000 this year. I would be very comfortable saying that between the two of them, Mike Weber and J.K. Dobbins, they will combine for more than 2,000 yards. I think that's a pretty safe bet. But, that may be 1,200 for one and 800 for another, or, 1,400 for one and 600 for another, or whatever it is, some combination like that. I think it's hard to say both will hit 1,000 this year, just because we don't know exactly what the division of carries is going to be. We don't, you're relying on both guys staying healthy all year, which is something Weber's had trouble with, and Dobbins has been hurt at times during his career as well. So I wouldn't necessarily bank on both of them hitting 1,000, but I think together, you want to average it out. They will average 1,000 yards apiece. I think that's reasonably safe.
Shannon, you're the tiebreaker.
Yeah, I've stated all along. I don't remember what show it was, but we were asking about if thought that both the running backs can get 1,000 yards apiece, and I was on board with that then. And excuse me, we still weren't sure on exactly who the quarterback was going to be. And I just still feel that both of those guys are going to get 1,000 for each of themselves. While you got Tate Martell, he's going to probably get another 1,500. No, not really 1,500, but on his way to his Heisman, he's going to outrun them both.
You're right. I want to amend my statement that 2,000 yard backs in this offense. If Tate Martell plays as much as his talent should allow him, you might not have 1,000 yard back because, Tom, you think about it, you get 13 possessions in a game, and if Tate Martell plays 8 of those possessions, that's 8 80-yard carries. I mean, it doesn't leave as many carries as we thought with the Dwayne Haskins offense.
So that's 640 rushing yards per game right there. I mean, I haven't looked this up, but I suspect that would be a record, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, I mean, look, I will go on record with this. If Ohio State has a player with at least 8 carries a game who is averaging 80 yards a touch, they will win at least, wait for it, 9 games this year. At least, maybe more.
All right, mark that down. Shannon, did you get that? Did you write that down for the show notes?
Yeah, and he said one of them was going to be against Michigan.
But, the thing that will help is now that they have Dwayne Haskins, they can get to the playoffs and win that second game or win that first game and get that 15th game. At that point, you have to average maybe like 75 yards rushing a game. It's doable, but like you said, Mike Weber has to stay healthy. J.K. Dobbins has to stay healthy. Then it comes down to Tony Alford and his he never knows how the carries are going to go. He says it's a feel on who gets the carries, and if one guy's hot, then you go with that guy. Even the Michigan State game last year, Mike Weber had 163 yards rushing, but it was on 9 carries, I believe. And JK had 18 or 19 carries. So even when Weber was looking really, really good, it was still Dobbins getting the ball. But I think Weber coming back, they sort of owe him some more touches. And I think it helps keep everybody fresh when you do that. The Urban Meyer this week was at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, some sort of luncheon, and it's the first time he's spoken with pretty much anybody since the spring game. And he was talking about the quarterbacks. He was talking about Dwayne Haskins. And the one thing, he was saying he's got a great release. He's got good size. He's mobile enough. But then he said, it is going to change how we attack defenses. And we've talked about that. It opens up the rest of the field. I like the fact that he's not saying it will change how we run our offense. He's still on the attack, and that's what the Ohio State offense is going to be. But when he says attack them differently, Tom, are we thinking it's the downfield passing game that opens everything else up? Is there more downfield passing? Is there more effective downfield passing? Is it deeper?
That's what I took. I mean, I think that the way I would look at it is last year they kind of used the horizontal passing game and just throw a little flare screen to one of the wide receivers or stuff that's within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. you kind of go horizontal to stretch the defense out, and then that opens it up to run the ball inside. And then when you run the ball inside, that forces them to bring their safeties up, and then that allows you to throw over the top. That's sort of how they called plays last year in a lot of cases. This year, I think maybe they are going to be a little more aggressive with that downfield passing and try and back those safeties up and do it that way. And, instead of more of an east-west kind of passing game, a little bit more of a north-south passing game, and try and back those safeties up, and then that opens things up inside for Dobbins, Weber, and then the running game is a lot more running back based. But in general, I think that attacking defenses differently means attacking them vertically rather than kind of horizontally in the passing game.
I think that's also going to open up the middle of the field for the slot guys, the tight ends, the running backs. You think back to how Oklahoma attacked the middle and the seams with the running backs and their tight ends. The deep passing attack, if it's effective, will open that area up. Shannon, what area do you think will benefit the most from this new attacking offense?
Well, first I want to point out that there's a couple of things that I'd say since probably Urban Meyer's come to Columbus that have been consistent that Ohio State fans have heard, especially during the offseason. One is that the tight ends are going to be used more. Two is Michigan's going to win this year. And the third one is having a deep passing game. So I'm trying to be hesitant just based on the simple fact that history has not given us what we kind of hope for, except for maybe 4 games in 2014 to having this deep passing game. I mean, it would open up the middle of the field. It wouldn't let the safeties creep up like we've talked about how many times, and really open it up a lot for Weber and Dobbins in the backfield. So, I mean, in theory, it's going to be great in order to be able to see, but will it actually work?
I'm with you on the deep stuff because I still want to see it. We've seen too many footballs bounce off of Terry McLaurin's hands. I don't know that that's Johnny Dixon's game. Paris Campbell said that he's working on the deep stuff, and I think that down the seam and where he is, the corner routes that they run with their slots, that could be very effective. I remember Torrance Gibson, he was looking like maybe he could become the next, big deep threat. Trayvon Grimes, same thing. He's got elite athleticism, elite everything. And, both of those guys are gone. Is it one of the freshmen coming in? Do we see that jump from one of the seniors? Do we see it from, I don't think we'll see it from Jalen Harris. That's not his game. But is there somebody, more than one person, who would become, even though in 2014 it was only Devin Smith really as a deep threat, but Corey Smith was there as well, but he had issues catching the ball. I just don't know if that they don't have Devin Smith, but I don't know if they have a consistent deep guy just yet. But Tom, to me, that's sort of like having a backcourt that can't shoot threes. Like, why can't you shoot threes? Why can't you catch the deep ball? Let me ask you this. Are you more concerned about a deep threat or pass protection? Do you think the Buckeyes are more likely to have one or the other? Which would you think they are better set for this year?
Boy, that's a really good question, because you're on the wide receiver side. You've got 3 guys who've been here for 4 years now, right? I mean, McLaurin and Paris Campbell and Johnny Dixon are the kind of those guys who are most likely to be the deep threat kind of guys. They've all been here long enough that normally you expect a guy to take a leap from his first year to his second year, or second year to his third year. You don't usually see guys make a big leap forward from their 4th year to the 5th year. So that's certainly a concern, and I don't know, who else. The guys at X, Ben Victor and Austin Mack and those guys, that's not necessarily the kind of guy who's going to be the guy who runs the 9 route and just, you hit him in stride 50 yards down the field. That's the Z receivers in this offense, which is the Campbells, the McLaurins, the Johnny Dixons. Maybe it's one of the guys who, at H. Maybe that is a Demario McCall thing, or maybe KJ Hill is not really a burner like that, so he's not really the downfield passing target as much. I certainly have concerns about the pass pro, especially at the tackle position. I mean, Thayer Munford everyone is very encouraged by him, but a sophomore starter at tackle. We've seen this before where you could be very talented and a sophomore and starting at tackle and still have games where you have an game. We've talked about Taylor Decker against Khalil Mack from Buffalo. We've talked about Isaiah Prince against Penn State in 2016. That one tackle who's shaky can really derail the whole offense. But I think that offensive line is more likely to be the single problem that derails things, but I'm not overwhelmingly confident that they're just going to be making it rain with deep balls to the Z's like Dixon and McLaurin, or the H's like Campbell and Hill, or any of those guys. I'm not overwhelmed with optimism about those guys just suddenly making a leap.
Can I just make one comment on that real quick? Based on how you said with Mac, what says that he can't make that leap? Because I don't know if you know this or not, because just these are the things that I know, but him and Dwayne Haskins are roommates. So that's something that they might be able to work on.
I've heard that, yes. I'm just looking in terms of like the absolute pure downfield run a 9 route kind of run a fly kind of routes. That is not what they typically have the X guys do. The X guys are kind of more 15 yards down the field.
Move the chains.
You think of a more of a move the chains possession receiver type. That's where that Austin Mack, Benjamin Victor receiver kind of fits in this offense. That's not to say they can't do that, but that's just the reason they split the receiver position into X's and Z's is the X's are kind of the possession receiver, move the chains kind of guy, and the Z's are supposed to be the guys who are the downfield threats, stretch things vertically kind of guys. So that's why I don't include Victor and Mack in there, because I do anticipate one or potentially both of them making a leap, Mack and Victor, but they don't really. Their role in this offense is not designed necessarily to be the downfield guy.
Yeah, I agree. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say I agree. I just wanted to go ahead. Stop it.
Victor has done that a little bit more than Mac, the downfield stuff. And I'm sorry. Go ahead, Shannon.
No, I was just joking around. Going to say. I believe, or I agree with you. I just wanted to point out that tidbit that inside information that I knew about being roommates. That's all.
Thank you for dropping that in. Yeah, think back to Michael Thomas. He wasn't used downfield as much as you think maybe he should have been. I think he had a touchdown catch deep down the field, like against Virginia Tech. Even Noah Brown as the X wasn't used deep all that much, here and there. But it's not like it was to Devin Smith, or when they're throwing it to McLaurin, or Corey Smith. It's just not necessarily that guy. That's more the guy who gets the first down rather than the 40 or 50 yard touchdown. But I think the skill set is there. It's just, that's like Tom said, that's not necessarily what the offense was. Now maybe it becomes that. Maybe they do that more. Maybe there's no reason that any of those guys should be limited in being a downfield threat. Because if you've got the quarterback that can do it, then make it happen. Take shots. Don't let one side of the field off. if you're going to attack the entire width, the entire breadth, then that means all corners. So I'd like to see those guys more involved, especially the bigger body guys, the 50-50 balls, the back shoulder throws, 30 yards downfield, that counts too. I think there's an opportunity for the big guys to make some big plays that may not be the after the catch stuff. But, Austin Mack showed last year a 33-yard catch where you get hit, knocked down, and get concussed is still a pretty good gain. Now, just because he didn't punch it in at the end, that doesn't slight him at all. One of the things that I think this Dwayne Haskins era will do for Urban Meyer is move the Ohio State quarterback discussion to the NFL. Because it's basically I think maybe the one position that Urban Meyer has no claim to for his recruiting materials. You can do the running backs in the NFL because you can just do Zeke, you can do Carlos Hyde, even Rod Smith. The receivers, I mean, Michael Thomas should probably be getting a stipend for the way they're going to use him in their recruiting tools. Tight ends with Jeff Hireman and Nick Vanette, maybe even now Marcus Baugh. Offensive linemen we know, Taylor Decker, Billy Price, Pat Elflein. Defensive ends, Joey Bosa is going to be there for a while. They just sent 3 guys into the NFL at defensive end. Defensive tackle might be something they need to hammer more. Linebackers we know, they're there, Shazier and guys like that. Corners we know. Safeties, I think Malik Hooker is going to show people this coming season. But quarterback, all there is Cardale Jones. And, JT Barrett's looking pretty good at rookie minicamp. Braxton Miller is a receiver. So they don't really have they can't really put out all of their graphics and pamphlets about the quarterbacks thing. So I think, when they say they haven't changed their philosophy on quarterbacks, that may be true, but the direction they're going in now, Tom, do you think this is the beginning of Ohio State sending quarterbacks to the NFL regularly?
Well, Haskins is certainly a very good first step if that's going to happen. He is, I mean, the most prototypical NFL quarterback they've had in decades. I mean, you go back through the guys who've been quarterbacks there, and it's a lot of kind of mobile guys who aren't necessarily particularly great passers or don't have particularly strong arms. And that's not a profile that has traditionally been looked upon real favorably in the NFL. You go back through the, sort of more prototypical pocket passer guys, Joe Germain, Bobby Hoying. I was a little surprised Hoying didn't have a better NFL career than he did.
Me too.
As a 3-year starter at Ohio State, but he didn't have the arm strength, I don't think, that Haskins does. So Haskins, I think, has a chance to be a very good first step there. And, as you kind of hinted at there, they do seem to be recruiting more, quote unquote, pro style quarterbacks as opposed to the dual threat guys. And, they have been, kind of going out of their way to say this is not, some kind of a sea change in their philosophy for their offense or anything like that. And this is just, these are the guys who they think are the best fits. But if you do send a guy who was labeled a pro style guy like Haskins, a big bodied, strong arm guy to the NFL, and he turns into something at the next level, and you bring in, say it's a Grant Gunnell or someone like that in the next class, and then he turns into something, that you can build it doesn't take long to become a fill in the blank at the next level. Ohio State has not put a ton of defensive backs in the league, over the last 30 years, but over the last, 5 to 10, all of a sudden they are DBU because they're cranking out first rounders there with regularity. So, it would not take very much for Urban Meyer to end that discussion pretty quickly if Haskins either next year or the year after that turns pro and turns into a pretty good pro, and they have another kind of pro prospect waiting in the wings behind him, that's a pretty easy narrative to swing.
There's also the 2020 kid out of Arizona, Jack Miller, that Kyle Morgan likes, who Ohio State also likes, and he likes Ohio State, who's more of that pro-style guy along the lines of Gunnell. One day I'm going to listen to somebody say his name who watches him and covers him and get the pronunciation exact so that I can also say it correctly. And then you've got Haskins. To me, I think this is the start. And you don't necessarily have to wait until he gets drafted for the production to begin, because kids will see him if he's productive and they're throwing the ball all over the place. And when I say all over the place, it's relative to Ohio State's offense, which is throwing it all over the place 42% of the time. That's pretty much going wild for Ohio State, because as Urban Meyer says, they want a balanced offense, but balanced means being able to do whatever you want, whenever you want. It doesn't mean 50-50. It just means the ability to be 50-50 because you're good enough to do anything. But it's never going to be Texas Tech, nor should it. Not in Ohio, where we breed tough people who then go and recruit good players from Florida to get the job done, and Tennessee and Missouri and Michigan and Texas, New Jersey. Who was the last really good Ohio State running back from Ohio? Beanie?
Yeah, probably Beanie Wells.
Boom, does he count? He was pretty good. He was the poor man's Antonio
Pittman was from Ohio, but he was right before Beanie Wells.
Yeah.
Lorette was from Ohio. He's obviously before them.
Maybe Boom.
Yeah, Boom Heron. He was pretty good.
He was a 1,000-yard rusher.
Yeah, 1,000-yard rusher, and got drafted in the NFL. I don't know if he played. I think he played a little bit in the NFL. I would.
Yeah, played a few years. Him. Who was the last good Ohio State running back from Missouri? That's much easier.
Was Jeff Logan from Missouri? I can't remember.
I guarantee those guys were all from Ohio.
When Shannon was listing stuff that people were complaining about earlier, I kept waiting for him to say that never, that they promise it's going to change and it never actually changes. I kept waiting for him to say, and we're going to recruit more kids from Ohio. We've got to do a better job in Ohio. Because, boy, that we hear that every February, and then the following February we hear it again.
You know who has to do a better job in Ohio? Ohio high schools.
The Ohio High School Athletic Association could do itself some favors by changing the spring football rule. We kind of talked about that a little bit a couple weeks ago, but a little change on that would probably make a big difference in the development of Ohio high school football players.
And even alongside that, more coaches would get to see these players because they're able to go and see them, and you don't necessarily have that time during the season. I assume that you can, because there's the NCAA permits visitations around spring football periods. I don't know. I should know the calendar better, but I don't want to. Some of the complaints or the worries about Dwayne Haskins and the move to a more pro-style offense is that now you've got a one-dimensional quarterback. And it's so funny to me that we're coming off of 4 years of people, quote-unquote people, the generalized people, complaining about the quarterback running the ball so much. And now we move away from that, and now you've got people who are concerned that the Ohio State offense can't operate without that kind of running quarterback. And as Urban Meyer said, Dwayne Haskins runs well enough. I don't consider him one-dimensional at all, because we saw him use the other dimension against Michigan last year. I think he does well enough to get out of trouble. That's what extend plays. That's what is important to Meyer and Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson. He can extend plays. Whether he can run the ball or not, that will only impact their play calling. If he's a really good runner like Braxton, we're going to give him the ball. If he's a really good runner like JT, going to give him the ball. If he's just an okay runner like Dwayne, roll him out and give him an RPO or something to where you've got him on the move a little bit, or you just drop him back and do whatever, or hand the ball off. Here's something I have for you, Tom. When we talk about a one-dimensional quarterback, which some people think Dwayne Haskins is because he's not good enough as a runner, you contrast that with dual threat, which would describe Braxton Miller. But Braxton Miller wasn't the greatest thrower of the football. So I'm wondering, is Haskins' running ability comparable to Braxton's passing ability, where it's good enough to go undefeated in 2012? It may not be this outstanding trait that he has, but if Braxton Miller is considered dual threat with his ability to throw it okay, is it crazy for me to say that Haskins is a better runner than Braxton is a thrower?
It's not crazy. I think that those two skills, quarterback running and quarterback throwing, are kind of graded on different curves. I think if you just took a pure 0 to 100, 0 to 99th percentile of NCAA quarterbacks, Braxton Miller is probably a little higher on the passing than Haskins is on the running. But quarterback throwing is such a bigger portion of your offense. If your quarterback can't throw, that can completely throttle your running game, because then the defense doesn't have to respect it, and they can turn you one-dimensional immediately. If your quarterback's not a great runner, that's not nearly as much of an issue, because you can still throw the ball and you can still run the ball with all the other guys whose job it is to run the ball. Ohio State has occasionally forgotten that, but they do have running backs on the roster, and you can use them to run the football pretty effectively, as some teams have shown. I think that, Miller was not a bad passer. Miller was about, let's see, I looked it up, 54% as a true freshman, 13-4 touchdown to interception ratio on a team with a Jim Bowman offensive coordinator and horrendous skill talent in some places. Those are pretty decent numbers for a true freshman. The sophomore, 58%, 15 touchdowns, 6 picks. 63% with 24 touchdowns and 7 interceptions as a junior. He was right around 8 yards per attempt throughout his career. His passing, I think, suffers sort of in comparison to his running, just because he was just an absolutely otherworldly runner. He was just, if you don't remember how good Braxton Miller was in the open field, go back and watch the 2013 Michigan game. And just watch him in the open field, just making guys miss, just blasting past people. He was the best running quarterback I think Ohio State's ever had. And they've had some pretty good running quarterbacks over the years. So I think that kind of makes his passing look relatively not great in comparison, but he was an okay passer. And I think the broader point that you're making is correct. They do not have to be one-dimensional. Haskins is not one-dimensional. He can run enough that he is not one-dimensional. This is not, a statue back there. This is not, I don't know, who was the least mobile Ohio State quarterback in memory? Joe Bowserman? Go back to Kent Graham, maybe? I don't know.
Taylor Graham?
There are, he can do enough that he is not going to be one-dimensional. He's going to be just two-dimensional enough that they won't rely on his legs, but they can use them every once in a while.
Because this is a quarterback who never had a 300-yard game, who his last 5 starts of his career in 2013, completion percentage of 44.8, 64.7, 40%, 38.1, and then 66.7 against Clemson. So this is a guy who had some really rough outings, even as he was a 3-year starter. So I think he's not above criticism, certainly. And would you rather have, Shannon, would you rather have a guy who is an okay runner but very talented passer, or a very talented runner like Braxton Miller but an okay passer? I think both answers are fine depending on what kind of defense you have, what you've got around them. So I don't know, Shannon, is there, do you have a preference? Is there a reason for a preference?
The last quarterback that I remember that was more of a one-dimensional, and he had a running back that averaged a little over 200 yards a game for 3 games, and they won a national championship. I think I'm going to go with that type of quarterback.
But even Cardale was running, I mean, he wasn't, but you're right, he wasn't Braxton, he wasn't JT Barrett, he was more along the lines of Dwayne Haskins.
Now, if I see Dwayne Haskins truck a nose tackle, then, hey, just build a statue for the kid right now.
Save it for the Michigan game, though, right?
They don't have any nose tackles this year.
Now, Tom, whenever I mention, like, somebody told me on Twitter, or somebody said this on the internet, you always lecture me. Like, what? Somebody on the internet said something stupid? So, there was a story, I don't know, one of us wrote something about the quarterbacks, and it may have been Brandon Zimmerman's piece about, now it's Dwayne Haskins' team. He's the leader. And somebody commented, and I know commenters in any walk of life, but these are our commenters, so let's show some respect. Mentioned that Joe Burrow was the proper choice. Urban Meyer made the wrong choice, and he hopes Joe Burrow has a better year than Dwayne Haskins this year, which to me is outrageous and idiotic to want somebody to, if you're a fan of a team, to want somebody else on another team to outperform your quarterback. And so then I asked on Twitter, like, are there more of you out there? And just looking now, 2,300 votes, and it's 12% yes. There are more people out there like that, 88% saying no. Now, I think a lot of people misread my poll, which happens a lot where I'm asking, like, are you one of these people? I don't think 12% of those people are those people, but there are people out there who want Joe Burrow to have a better year than Dwayne Haskins, because, Tom, these are the people who, above all else, want to be correct about somebody being wrong. And I think I just described the internet. And I bet half of those people, Tom, and I'll let you talk now, half of those people call him Joe Burrows.
At least half. So now you've preempted my rant about how people are wrong on the internet. Okay, so that was good. You've preempted me discussing reading comment sections. That was good. Just assume that I'm giving you the lecture about the non-scientific nature of Twitter polling here. Right. Okay, and now moving on to Joe Burrows. Did that just for you. I knew it would get you. If you are rooting for another player to have a better year than your team, and you are not, like, if you are Joe Burrow's father or Joe Burrow's friend from high school or a buddy of his from Ohio State, and you are really rooting for him to have a great season at LSU or wherever he transfers to, that's fine. That makes total sense. And I think that everyone associated with the Ohio State program wishes him well and hopes that he is successful wherever he goes. But to say that you want him to succeed and you want, Dwayne Haskins and Tate Martell and everyone at Ohio State to fail because that will show that you were right. That makes you a you fan more, a fan of yourself more than a fan of Ohio State, which this person presumably thinks that they are. So congratulations, you're Buckeye guy.
Now, Shannon, I feel like Tom was talking directly to you there.
I was actually wondering, being the committee chairman, that how this is going to fall on my lap. But, the only thing I'm going to say in this whole regard is, Joe Burrow, nice knowing you. Wish you well. If we see you in the playoffs, hope we beat the crap out of you. I'm all aboard the Haskins train. So I'm not in that 10%, 12%, whatever crazy percent that is, because I got that scarlet and gray blood.
And I think you should. If you're a Buckeye fan, you support the guys who are there. And the thing is, he left you. Joe Burrow left you.
Exactly. That's why he's Burrows.
Joe Burrow's left you people. Let him go. Now, if if you love something and it was meant to be, maybe he comes back in 2019 as a graduate transfer. And
that
then
because Haskins is going to the NFL?
But then you have the people who are so convinced that Meyer and Day made the wrong decision. Whereas, Tom, we talked last week, there may not have been a decision even made, but I don't understand how people can be so definite that they are right when all they've seen is the spring game. And Tom, you and I have seen more, and I have no clue because that more is meaningless. We've seen, I don't know, 15, 50, 35 throws from either guy in small portions of practice. And I'm not definite about either of them, other than the fact that I think they are both very good and will do very well. But people, I don't know how they're so definite in this, other than Tom. Well, I'll just let you go ahead and lecture me some more if you would like.
So you'd like to know why people on the internet have strong opinions about things they don't know all that much about?
That's all I'm asking.
Well, Gerd, you're on Twitter. You know how this works.
Haters.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, people have strong opinions that it's Haskins or Burrow, and one of them is absolutely going to be better, and there's no question. And how could anyone think the other thing? And I mean, like you said, we have probably seen twice as many, at least, throws and reps and whatever from Burrow and Haskins this spring as most people have. And after the spring game, I kind of went, yeah, okay, I don't know. But either one would probably be a very good quarterback at Ohio State. I think that Ohio State would be in pretty good hands with either one. I don't think either one was significantly ahead from anything I saw. The players and coaches we talked to didn't give the indication that one of them was significantly ahead. So, I think people kind of probably went into the spring game with the idea that this is, this person is going to be the person who should win the job. And then, you see what you want to see, and that, that person looks better to you than the other person. And so obviously anyone's an idiot if they don't agree with you. So I don't think that, I think we probably have maybe 10% of the available information that the coaching staff has, maybe. And that might be high because they have, all the other practices that we didn't see. They have the off-season workouts. They probably, have information about how guys are doing in the weight room. They have information about how guys are doing in film study, all that kind of stuff. We have no idea. So, and there's probably a personality component too. And, we have a general sense about a lot of these guys, but not nearly to the degree that the coaches and players who spend a lot of time with them do. So, yeah, I don't think anyone on the beat feels like they absolutely positively know that this is the guy who should have been the guy. And people who are, have even less information probably shouldn't feel that way either, even if they do.
I don't know that we should believe the coaches when they, said after practice, they don't even know. But if it's true and they don't even know until they gather everything up, then, nobody outside of them should know. And even if they're lying, nobody outside of them should say they know or should be so definitive that they know, because what you know is what your bias has confirmed, basically, in the scrimmage that you saw on TV or in the stadium. I just people need to. I just don't like the whole definitive. They made the wrong choice because you don't have all of the information. Tom, you said 10%. I'm thinking it's much lower, and even if it is 10%, the whole other 90%. I mean, that's a lot of information. That try to make any decision based on 10% of the knowledge, or make any judgment based on the 10% of one aspect of this entirety of anything, and you're not going to be very successful in the decisions that you're making. That's my rant on the internet, which I love and am thankful for, and I respect greatly and gratefully. But now let's move on to the part of the show that Tom has been waiting for, which is all or nothing. Shannon, did you have anything else on the quarterback stuff?
No, I was just going to say, to piggyback on what you guys were just talking about.
You just said no, and then then it's.
Well, you just said about the quarterback. You just said about the quarterbacks. So I'm just going to add about what you were just talking about. I mean, how is it that we can call somebody at home that's never won a national championship, that's not making $7 million or $1 million as an assistant coach, that has less knowledge than any of the coaches, like you said? How dare we call these people idiots? I mean, they are so smart that all these universities are lining up to hire them and bring them on board, that they are where? Who? What's your name?
Now I feel like you're talking.
I was very careful not to use the word idiots, just for the record.
Oh, there was the word idiot thrown around in there. I heard it.
All right, let's go to All or Nothing, episode 5. The O'Corning, I guess it would be the title of that one.
Come on, John.
and if you're following along, which I'm sure you are, we are now 5 of, I think, 8 episodes deep into All or Nothing on Amazon Prime, detailing the triumphant 2017 season of the Michigan Wolverines. And episode 5 covers the loss to Penn State, I believe, as a 42-13 loss. And then it also goes into Rutgers?
Yes.
Rutgers, yes.
Okay. The homecoming game.
So two rivalry games right there for Michigan. So it's a really good episode. And there's so much O'Corn in this game, in this episode. And we'll cover it all over the next 2 hours, and detailing all of the for the shortest, I think it's the shortest episode of the series so far, which is not a surprise considering the violent nature of the loss to Penn State. I think it's like 34 minutes, where others have been in the 40s. But this was a game where John O'Corn did not perform well. I could have the box score up and be more prepared, but I don't, because really the numbers don't matter. Just know he did not play well. But I love the way, Tom, that he was critical of everybody else. Comes off the field, I'm not getting enough time. I'm not getting protection. Then, the way the defense is getting ripped up, he's like, I've never seen a defense like this. All the while, he's playing terribly. But Tom, is a leader enough to be critical of everyone else?
Okay, while you were talking, I pulled up John O'Corn's stats. Penn State was 16 for 28 for 166 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 picks.
Pretty good.
14 carries minus 3 yards. Rutgers was 3 of 6 for 13 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 1 interception. So, I mean, we don't get access to the Michigan coaches' grades the way we do, when Urban Meyer comes out and tells us who graded a champion. I would guess that John O'Korn probably did not grade a champion in either of those two games. But yeah, in the Penn State game, I had every week we say that you and I write down the same stuff.
Yep.
You and I wrote down the same stuff again this week. No blocking, he says, coming off the sideline, talking to Harbaugh about how the line isn't blocking. I've never seen our defense get torched like this. And then in the Rutgers game, he's yelling at who's their tight end, Zach Gentry,
yep.
Yelling at him about not coming back for a ball that got picked off. And then he botched 2 snaps, and he was yelling about unforced errors. And it was like, I think he knew that the bad snaps, dropped the fumbled snaps were his problems because he didn't name anyone. He just called them unforced errors. It's like, well, we're failing as a team right now. So that was probably his sort of passive way to admit that it was his fault there. I am really going to miss having him in my life when this series is over. He has been such a revelation from a comedic perspective in this series. Unintentional comedy from him has been off the charts. His play has been, I mean, you were all there the last fall. You remember what his play was like. And boy, you never know whether this was, whether they edited it to make him look bad or to really play up this particular angle, or if this is really how he is. But boy, does he come across real great, like a great teammate in this episode.
What I love that pass to Zach Gentry, before the play, he tells the offensive line, all right, give me time. This is a big one. And it's basically just a play action to a tight end running maybe a corner route, something of that nature. So, he drops back and he unloads, and it's well short. And the defensive back, or maybe even a linebacker, whoever, the defensive guy, sort of jumps the route and just takes the ball, and Gentry can do nothing because the ball is underthrown. And O'Korn's yelling at Zach. He's like, play for the ball, Zach. And he's like, go up and get it. And there is no up and get. The ball was underthrown. He can't go get it. The dude is 6'7". He's a big tight end. You underthrow it. It's not on him. And the guy, I'm going to miss him as well. But this is a guy who I've probably deleted most of my tweets about him because I feel like they're mean, and because there's just so many of them because of the year that he had. And you mentioned like he's not the best leader, and the things that he says to his teammates to like encourage them or to show that he's the starting quarterback. I think he has like a football cliche a day calendar, and each day you're like, ooh, that's a good one. Hey, let's play hard today, guys. And then Tuesday it's pin your ears back, guy. Ooh, that pin your ears back. I like that one. I'll tell the guys that one. And it's just hey, play hard, guys. Hey, we need this one. Hey, I'm counting on you. There's probably a hang in there, one that just slipped in, at the printing shop. Like, whoa, sorry about that one. That's my cat calendar. The guy, I feel bad for him because I'm a human being, and he was not great last year. Shannon, do you have any O'Korn thoughts of your own?
The word you guys are looking for and you're failing to grasp here is delusional. Either it's from a series of concussions over his career and CTE is already kicking in, or, when you're sitting there watching film and you're saying to the camera, hey, Penn State's scared of us. They're more scared of us than we're scared of them because we've beaten them handily the last 2 years. Newsflash, Penn State was ranked number 2. You weren't even ranked because, you got beat by Michigan State. Oh, and that's right, it was a monsoon. This is the same kid who's come out and said that he was the best quarterback in the draft. The only credit that I can give him is with him and the offensive lineman And forgive me for, I think is Larry Proufet, what I forget his last name. The 16-year-old that's had like over 100 some surgeries.
Yeah.
And I mean, that part there showed, the humanity and what's great about just the football programs and stuff, just rallying around, individuals that have gone through so much. Ohio State has Jacob, and it's great to see that these schools do it. And that's the only credit that I can give him is for his actions with Larry and how close him and Larry were. But other than that, the kid just straight up delusional.
Yeah, the Larry guy, he's got this necklace, and every time he has a surgery, there's like a new charm put on it, and there's over 100 charms. I can't remember what they called them on that necklace. And
Grant Newsom, or something like that.
Yeah, Grant Newsom, who is an offensive lineman, had his leg broken and nearly had to have it amputated. And he pulled the 6 of the charms, and he's like, "This is me. These are my 6 surgeries." And then, you compare that to everything that Larry had gone through, and I mean, yeah, that was some good stuff. So that's where it's like they're trying to make you feel bad for John O'Korn again. I know a lot of people are going to be like, I'm not going to let it. It's not working. It's not going to work. But they even teased it in the last episode where he said, as a team, I think Penn State fears us. They fear Michigan. And there is a lot of delusion there, Tom.
There is. We have not gotten to the best line. Did you tweeted something about O'Korn throwing his teammates under the bus earlier this evening, and I just tweeted back that wasn't my favorite line. You probably had not gotten to my favorite line yet. Did you figure out what the best line he had in the entire episode was?
I ran out of room on my notebook, so I couldn't, but I'm sure
He's playing the first half against Rutgers.
Yes, I do.
he fumbles 2 snaps. He throws the horrendous interception. He's been shaky for weeks. So they warm up Brandon Peters. Brandon Peters comes into the game. He marches Michigan right down the field. They score a touchdown. They take the lead. The coaches are going, yeah, all right, that looked like football. And so the next time the offense goes out, O'Korn is standing right next to Jim Harbaugh, and he says to him, "Who's in?" And Harbaugh goes, "What?" Like, you have spent the last 3 weeks doing nothing that looks like football. Brandon Peters just took the ball right down the field, scored a touchdown. Who do you think is in? What game are you watching? Are you watching another game right now? What do you mean, who's in?
Delusional.
I woke up my dog laughing at that one. Yeah.
I feel like there's one line an episode, and it seems like it's usually O'Korn, and I just howl with laughter at it. That was the one this week. Like that is we're what, 4 episodes in, 5 episodes in. That is my new. Every week I think, oh, this is going to be the best moment of the whole series, and then John O'Korn says, "Who's in?"
I don't know if you guys watch.
Oh, they'll never top that one.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys watch It's Always Sunny, but that's something like Charlie would just drop in, like, just complete idiot, and then you're like, "Who's in?" And everybody just looks at him like, "Just go away." But the other thing I liked was before the Penn State game, Pep Hamilton is up in the press box, and he says to the rest of the offensive staff about Saquon Barkley, "Did you all see his body?" And, he's just an impressive guy. And you're thinking, well, you're the running game coordinator or he's the passing game coordinator at Michigan, but don't fawn over the other guys on the other team when, there's a camera there and they're catching everything you say. But
it's one of those ones.
Another very good episode, even if it was short in nature. Tom, did you have anything else from that episode that you liked?
I just wanted to say that this is far enough into the season now and the camera in front of Pep Hamilton in the press box is just a little fixed GoPro or something. It's just a little camera. It's not there's a guy standing there with a camera in his face. Pep Hamilton has 100% forgotten that there's a camera there and a microphone recording everything he says. That's why they're having that conversation. Because the first few days, if there's a camera person there recording right in front of you, you notice it. And after a while, it is wallpaper. That is a tried and true truism of documentary filmmaking. After a while, you're just even when there's a camera guy there, you are just wallpaper, and people forget you're there. And that's it's the old real world when people stop being nice and start being real. Like, it doesn't take long, and they forget you're there, and then they start talking. That has clearly happened for some of the conversations that they're having in front of cameras.
Shannon, you got anything else on the episode?
Yeah, going with the Pep Hamilton, I liked his I've lost all confidence in him, but hey, it's your call, coach. It's kind of like, I'm not going to be responsible for this if the ship goes down. You got to bask in this one. But there was one saying that Harbaugh had that really, it made me like, I don't know, I was sitting there scratching my head with confusion. And I think it was something like, there's only two things that, come in your life, and it's either like fear or focus. And you can only let one of them in. Well, why did you even bring fear up? Because it shouldn't be coming in. You know what I mean? It's like, you guys should be focused. Don't be talking about fear, because that's you open the door to it.
Are you guys scared right now?
I liked his halftime speech at Penn State where he said, "There's no place to surrender. There's no Appomattox," which I'm not sure I'd be comping myself to the South. I don't. You're already getting clobbered in a football game. Now you're the Confederates too. Like, maybe pick a different. What was analogy there?
What was that other one before the Penn State game when he was in that team meeting? Something about two things that don't win you a game, but longevity basically does, and the people that fight for it the longest come out on top. And he points out that his team has both the traits. Now we just need to figure out the longevity part. What? I just was confused.
Welcome to Michigan football. I mean, that half of the stuff he says you have to ignore. The other half you have to decide whether or not you want to figure it out. Because I don't know how much he says that really sticks with the players. Because when you see like the Real Life Wednesday videos and you see how the Ohio State, they're all taking notes, they've got their notebooks and everything, and they're like transfixed on the speaker. When you're watching Jim Harbaugh talking and his team paying attention to him, it's like a college lecture that is not a major course. It's like an elective, something that doesn't really matter, and you're just there because they don't look, Tom, all that enraptured by anything he ever has to say.
I mean, it's a little bit like what I was just talking about with Pep Hamilton and the cameras, where you just sort of forget they're there. I think there are times that you can sort of see people maybe starting to tune him out a little bit. I mean, that's that kind of rah-rah shtick that he has, and we're going to be a rocket ship, and we're going to be, we're on our way to the moon, and all the stuff he was saying earlier in the year. Like, that's great. That's, if you want to do your, we're a mountain climber or we're a rocket ship or whatever analogy you want to use for your team, that's great while you're winning. As soon as you start losing, it gets real corny and real tiresome, and people start tuning you out. And I think that they have lost enough there that stuff sort of starts getting tuned out a little bit. And, that you either have to start winning pretty soon, or that becomes a big problem, because once you lose your team, that can be, that's a pretty hard thing to get back.
I'm just thinking over my favorite memories of these 5 episodes so far. It's the kill. It's who's in. I mean, this series is really, it's given me more than I ever thought it could. It's given me lifelong memories. And I'm looking forward to the last 3 episodes. Probably going to miss it when it's gone. Maybe they'll do it again next year. He hasn't nixed the idea. We'll see. Anything else, Shannon, on this episode?
Yeah, I love the. Well, actually, there was 2 things. when he's talking about when you're playing the music, pretend it's your music. When they're cheering, pretend that you did something great. It was like, what? Dude, no, that's not how it goes. It's like you don't want them cheering, so you want to make them boo, or you want to make them quiet, so be aggressive. But after the Penn State game, the whole there's no more bandwagon, it's just us. Why are you worried about a damn bandwagon? Why do you care about everybody else? You're the coach, and your focus is supposed to be on winning. Who cares about the fans and everybody else? I don't know. I think, and the way he walks, you could tell that his body has endured a lot of beating in the NFL. So it's kind of like maybe if you're to negatively recruit, be like, well, Thad Matta, he can't be on the sidelines because look at the way he walks. So, I mean, it's kind of like, Jim Harbaugh. You see the way he walks, his back's about to give out.
When they're cheering, pretend they're cheering for you. It's like, well, so is that our touchdown? Did Saquon Barkley just score for us? Because if he did, that would be pretty cool.
I don't think you can sell Michigan fans on this loud stadium is actually cheering for you because they have never once experienced that. No one, look around. No one is shaking keys. These are not our fans.
I can hear these people. How could they possibly be for us? All right, should we go to listener questions? Tom, you got anything else on the show?
I would love to go to listener questions.
All right, let's do it. Shannon?
All right, from Indiana Buckeye. 5 away games this fall. Are the coaches most fearful of Jerry's World, Happy Valley, or East Lansing?
Tom, go ahead and answer this one. This one's easy.
Yeah, this is definitely easy. They're not afraid of anything, but the most intimidating or concerning venue on the list is for sure Happy Valley. Jerry World, that's, theoretically a neutral site game, and yes, it's going to be a lot more TCU fans, but that's not a stadium that's like an overwhelming place, and they just played there last year. Michigan State, it's a that's obviously a good program. That is not an intimidating stadium. It's not that loud. It's not that big. The student support there is maybe-ish, but Penn State, it'll be a night game. It'll be a whiteout. That place gets loud. And, if Penn State is ahead or competitive, it will be loud kind of throughout. So I don't think that's much of I don't think anyone's going to disagree with me on that.
No, and the players love playing there, but they also tell you it's the most, I wouldn't say intimidating, but the hardest environment to play in. What's next?
All right, from Go Bucks. In 5 years, you get to name Urban's replacement. Who would it be? I go with Matt Campbell, Iowa State.
Tom, I don't know on this one because I go back to two guys who are already on the staff in Alex Grinch and Ryan Day. They're very early in their tenures, but they are trending upward. With Campbell, I think he will be, his next job could be the last job he ever has, because he's made that stepping stone, that ladder, where the next one should be a Power 5 major job. And does he want to leave that for Ohio State? But then I also, Ryan Day or Alex Grinch, if Ryan Day is here another 2 years, goes somewhere and is successful, I don't think he'll leave for his final job. Like Tom Herman left for Houston and then is now at his final job if everything works out. Alex Grinch, if he leaves, he won't be taking his final job. Even Urban Meyer's, I guess, best assistant in terms of the best job that he landed right out of the gate would maybe be Dan Mullen at Mississippi State, and that wasn't his final job. So I'm wondering, in 5 years, both of those guys are going to be gone. I don't know. Maybe I would go. It's so odd to me to think that for me to pick one of these two guys as the next Ohio State coach when they've never been a head coach. But when you hear people talk about them and what the coaching circles think of them, you have to project a little bit out there. I think today maybe I'm siding more on Grinch over Ryan Day as to who the next. I mean, who would be the guy I'd pick out of anybody? I don't really have a good answer because I'm so centrally located to Ohio State. I would probably limit it to the guys between Day or Grinch. And plus, I didn't really look too hard at this one, Tom.
I think there are two characteristics that I would be looking for. Because, I mean, 5 years out is kind of hard because there are guys who are assistants right now who could get a group of 5 job or a low power 5 head coaching job next year, have build that program, be pretty good, build, I mean, pick a school. I'll say Iowa because it definitely will not be Iowa because Kirk Ferentz is there till the end of time. But I mean, someone goes to Iowa and they build that program into the point where they win a Big Ten championship, and then that then makes them potentially the hot coach in 5 years that maybe Ohio State goes after. So there are a lot of people who could be in this discussion 5 years from now whose names you don't know yet. But overall, I think the two characteristics I would be looking for is someone with some kind of Ohio State ties, whether it's an Ohio native who maybe was an assistant here or played here, and then also someone with head coaching experience. I have Grinch's name and I have Day's name written down as well, but I think this is not a first head coaching job. This is not a learn on the fly. Now I'm going to figure out how to be a head coach. Like, this is not the place to do that. So you want someone with Ohio State ties. I think we've seen the value in that with Urban Meyer. We've seen the value in that with Jim Tressel. As compared to John Cooper, he didn't have Ohio State ties, and people always said he just didn't understand the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry, and just once it sort of started going downhill from him in that department, it never got better. So it doesn't have to be a former Ohio State player or a former Ohio State assistant, but someone with some kind of Ohio State ties, I think, would be helpful. But head coaching experience, I think, is a absolute deal breaker if you don't have that, to me. So, I mean, the three names I have are Luke Fickell. If he continues building Cincinnati, I think he would be a good choice. He's recruiting well there. You've got 5 more years. Let's see what, can you get that program back to a top 10 type national program? If so, then he's potentially your guy. Day and Grinch would have to leave and go get a head coaching job somewhere, whether that's, build a MAC program or get a low level Big Ten kind of program, something like that, and build that program and show that you can be the CEO of the program and run it and turn it into a winning organization. Campbell's interesting. I don't know, where do you think Matt Campbell goes after this year? Because I am very much on board with the idea that he's going somewhere. I don't know where he goes. That's a significant step up from Iowa State,
Michigan,
but is probably not Michigan. That is somewhere.
Oh, you said step up. I'm sorry.
Midwestern, northern SEC type, northern ACC type footprint. That's a significant step up from Iowa State. I mean, Kentucky.
What about
if it was last year, I would have said Tennessee, but Tennessee just got filled. Florida just got filled. Mississippi State just got filled. Ole Miss just got filled. Arkansas just got filled. I mean, maybe Missouri if things really go sideways for Barry Odom this year. But I don't know. I don't know where he goes. I mean, Oklahoma's not going to be open. Oklahoma State's not going to be open. Texas isn't going to be open. Texas A&M's not going to be open. Most of the Big Ten, I don't think there's going to be a huge amount of turnover this year. I don't know. He should go somewhere because he's done an amazing job at Iowa State. I don't know where he goes.
Well, if he's a national guy, does Sam Darnold leaving USC, does that tank the Trojans this year? Or in a couple of years, when Nick Saban retires, and Dabo Swinney goes to Alabama, now you've got that Clemson job open. And if he can turn Iowa State into anything, then I think he could be a guy that everybody looks at, and it doesn't just have to be the usual suspects where you're one slightly larger step away from Iowa State. I mean, it could be one of the 6 or 7, 8 jobs that everybody wants. I think if he continues to do what nobody really should be able to do at Iowa State, he's going to get more eyeballs than just, just the Midwest.
So Notre Dame replacing Brian Kelly.
Shannon.
Notre Dame replacing Brian Kelly.
Why? We missed that one, Tom. But the other thing, you're talking, 5 years down the road. Let's keep in mind, Urban Meyer was a head coach for 4 years, and he was choosing between Notre Dame and Florida. So a ton of things can happen in 5 years. What's next?
All right, this one's from Joe K. Defensive projected starters, no oars allowed. Linebacker in particular. Not any fun.
I guess I have to sit this one out.
No oars and no Irish. Tom, I think we could probably agree on the front four. And the other thing to keep in mind, the whole idea of starters is kind of does not apply to the defensive ends, to the corners, and it might start not applying to linebackers because we're talking about there are packages for different players. And if Greg Schiano decides we want to open up with this package, then you might have a guy who's not technically a starter in there to begin, and now he's a starter. But if you're saying who's going to get the majority or who's going to get the first reps against Oregon State, I think we're talking Nick Bosa and Chase Young at defensive end, Robert Landers and Draymond Jones at the tackles. And then what do you think at linebacker?
Yes, that is what I had on the front four as well. I will take the free space in the front four. Okay, so moving to safety, I've got Jordan Fuller at the field safety, Isaiah Pryor at the boundary. I think you're going to have a 4-man rotation at corner, like Gerd said, but I think you have to sort of assume it's going to be Kendall Sheffield and Damon Arnett to start, but you're going to certainly see Jeff Okudah and Sean Wade as well. Now on the linebackers, Shannon, what do you think at linebacker?
My job is to read the questions.
I think I'll go this way. I think Justin Hilliard's going to beat out Baron Browning. I think Keandre Jones also beats out Baron Browning and Pete Werner. Question mark? And then Malik Harrison holds down the Sam and beats out Dante Booker and Dallas Gant. And all of these have question marks rather than oars. Tom, you're.
I went with Justin Hilliard at the mic and Baron Browning at the will and Malik Harrison at the Sam. But I mean, we've talked about this before. You could slide any of at least 6 different defensive linebacker alignments out there, and I'd kind of go, yeah, I could see that, and that'll probably be fine.
Yeah, Shannon, what's the next one?
From Smartwater, where does Dante Booker fit in this defense? Does he fit in with this defense?
I don't think he's necessary, but that's under the assumption that Malik Harrison is going to be very good. And Tom, after this spring, I know everybody left being confident and feeling great about where things stand, but I don't think all of the questions were answered, so that leaves Dante Booker as still part of the equation, especially if the one guy, well, not the one guy, but I thought Malik Harrison would come in and really solidify that spot because he's played it. and he's entering his junior season. And the fact that he doesn't, it leads me to believe that Dante Booker is still going to have a say on how things shake out at linebacker.
Yeah, there's a spot for him somewhere. I don't know that that's a full-time starting role kind of spot, but they may use him situationally. Maybe he's better in maybe he matches up better with the faster tight ends, and that they have Malik Harrison in there against the bigger tight ends, or if the other team is not going to be throwing to the tight end, or they don't throw to their backs as much, then maybe it's one versus the other. Maybe you can use them situationally somehow, where in certain spots one is a better role, better option than the other. I don't see Booker as a full-time starter this year, probably. I mean, it's hard to say because he lost his job last year and then was out with a shoulder all spring, so we didn't see him at all. And when is he actually back? I know he had a pretty serious, was it a labrum or a rotator cuff or something? It was some kind of pretty serious shoulder injury. Is he supposed to be full go for the start of fall camp? I don't know if we heard that officially.
That's the other thing. People didn't really ask too much about him other than early on, like, is he still on the team? And that was about it. And somebody asked Urban, what do you want from him? And he said, I hope he's well enough to be our starter. But that's what he wants from every player. So there's really not too much you can read into that. But everybody outside of the program has basically moved on. Those inside the program have not. Dante Booker, now that they are at 85 scholarships, now he doesn't have to move on. So that's good for him too. He did grade a champion at least once, was like a defensive player of the game, I think once last year. So there's definitely potential, but I don't know that they've ever missed him when he's been out. They didn't miss him in 2016 when Jerome Baker came in. And they got better later in the season. Now, that may have been more about Worley being outside where he is better and Jeff Borland coming in to solidify things. But when he's been out, it's never been like, oh no, what do they do? They want depth. They want veterans. He's that. But like you said, Tom, I'm not sure that I'm pretty sure he's not a full-time starter. If he is, I'll be surprised.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I mean, he's there is a spot for him somewhere. He's a physically gifted player, and he's been around long enough that he should be able to get himself in the right spots to make plays. There is a role for him somewhere, but it's probably a situational role more than a starting role.
All right, what's next?
All right, this is from Smartwater again. Is Bowen good enough to win his job back at guard, or is he strictly going to fight with Mumford for a spot at tackle? He has a small window to reclaim what he has earned last year now that he has missed spring practice. And OSU is fairly stacked at guard with Jordan, Knox, Davis, and Pridgeon.
Yeah, it's a tough situation with all of the bodies on the interior. The good thing for Brandon Bowen is he is going to be back at tackle, initially at least, because that's what Thayer Munford said earlier in the spring when it was going to be Munford at right tackle and him and Bowen competing in the fall for right tackle. But now, Tom, if Thayer Munford is the left tackle, I think what happens is it's basically they have to figure out if Bowen is one of those two best tackles. It's going to be interesting to see how they do that, though, because, well, I guess if Isaiah Prince is at right tackle, that is also where I would expect Brandon Bowen to be repping, which means that Isaiah Prince being part of that 2000 rep club, I assume he's right around there. They won't need him working as much at right tackle, which should then allow them to get a better look at Bowen And then if Thayer Munford isn't playing up to his potential, then you have your answer there. And then Isaiah Prince maybe goes back over to left tackle. I think it's just a situation where they're going to go with their two best. And if it's Bowen and anybody else, Bowen will stay at the right tackle. If it's Munford and Prince, then I guess we'll see if Munford stays at left tackle. But I think it's going to be between those three. And if it's not Bowen, then you've got a very valuable guy who's your swing tackle, can be a guard if you need him to be. Basically, he's one of those guys that every team wants to have, but very few do. So it's a luxury in that way.
It is, and it makes sense to keep him at tackle because right now you've got, if we're assuming that it's Munford at left tackle, Josh Allaby is the guy who backed up Jamarco Jones at left tackle last year. I would assume they'll keep him there. You got Prince at right tackle. That means your backup right tackle, if you move Bowen to guard, your backup right tackle is probably Max Ray, right? Who's a true freshman,
right.
Which is, that's not a situation you want to be in, playing a true freshman at tackle. I mean, we talked earlier about, how playing a sophomore at tackle can be dicey. You don't want a true freshman as your backup tackle. So even if he's not a starter, I think the most valuable place for him is to stay at tackle and give you that depth. And, we saw this spring, maybe moving from right tackle to left tackle, if that was an issue from Isaiah Prince. Bowen was a right tackle last year. I don't know if he played. I would assume he probably played left tackle in high school. So, maybe that's not as much of an issue as a move for him. But again, he missed the second half of last season with that broken leg. He missed spring ball again. So, and I don't know exactly where he is in his rehab. I assume he's probably close-ish to 100% or will be shortly. But, he's missed a lot of time. He's probably missed, he's probably not quite at 100% strength yet. He's probably not at 100% quickness yet. And, just getting the footwork down again. All of that stuff is kind of a little bit of a concern. But, he is a valuable piece for them. And he will end up playing meaningful minutes at some point this season. Someone's going to get hurt. Someone's going to, or they won't, they won't be happy with someone's performance. And then, if he's the third tackle, then he's the guy who goes in. He will end up playing meaningful minutes for them at some point this season at tackle. But yeah, I think you're right. I think that's where he fits in best this year.
I agree. Shannon, what's next? What's the last one, I think?
Yeah, we need to hurry up and do this so I can go break my TV about the Indians bullpen. This one's from @Derek Rose's knee. Is it impossible for you to say something nice about the Browns?
No. Tom, is it impossible for you?
I mean, they won one game 2 years ago. I guess that was good.
Yeah, that's not impossible at all. I think that does it. Shannon, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, just as far as on the network, I'm going to get the post out for Thursday, but the show's out, the Silver Bullets podcast. We're going to be doing a state of the Big Ten, a different team each week, and this last week was Illinois.
The Illinois podcast was very interesting. I actually listened to that today while I was walking the dog. That's worth your time. They had Robert from Illini on, and he had a really interesting perspective about like what Lovie Smith is doing and sort of where he is in the process. And that was actually a very interesting lesson. You and Chip did a nice job with that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Save it for off the air. Take it to email, Tom, please.
Maybe you could teach this other guy to listen to the show too.
I can't work miracles, Shannon.
Baby steps. All right. Thank you everybody for listening. Make sure to check out the rest of the shows. As Shannon said, check out the Silver Bullets podcast when that posts, or if you've already subscribed, then you've got it. Then we've got Sloopcast on Monday, and just subscribe to the network on iTunes or whatever your listening preferences are, and then you get all of the shows whenever they drop. So thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you next week.
If you tell me that tomorrow's alright, we could steal a car and leave